This is episode 46 of the Construction Leading Edge podcast from constructionleadingedge.com. My name is Todd DeWalt, and my job here is to help you grow your leadership skills, grow your business, and grow your income. Today we have an interview with Jennifer Lanzetti. She is not only a contestant on season 32 of the TV show Survivor, but she's also the owner of CN3D Construction, what she calls a virtual construction company. And we cover topics in this interview including the following: why an all-girl alliance wasn't a good idea on Survivor, the business lessons that she learned from being on the show Survivor. We also talk a lot about adversity and how it can shape you, and what's really helpful is she talks about what not to do during a crisis. She talks about the resistance that she encountered when starting her own business. We discuss why being direct is crucial in business, and lots of other goodness. But before we get into the interview, I want to share a resource with you. I've got a question. How many of you out there sell to residential customers? And do you want to make more money selling to residential customers? There's a lot of residential service providers who are out there that include home builders, remodelers, HVAC, electrical, plumbers, painters, carpet, flooring, tile, etc. And these residential service providers want to grow their business and they want to make more money, right? They also want a steady flow of work, and they like to know that they're getting some bang for the buck that they're spending on advertising. I know I never liked spending money on yellow pages or print advertising because I felt like I was just throwing money out the window hoping some of it came back to me. Well, a small plumbing contractor in Missouri found a way to get $2,000 a week in additional sales and got a 39x on their ad spend. Whatever they spent on ads, they got a 39x ROI on their ad spend, with something that I think you might be interested in. And here's what the owner had to say about what he found. Quote, "This gets you in the game. It's taken our business to places we could never have imagined. I've saved our last Yellow Pages ad for my museum. Brochures and other print advertising just don't have the same reach and targeting options," end quote. Now, what is this business owner talking about? Well, he's talking about Facebook ads. Now, are you interested in learning how to use Facebook ads to grow your business? Because I've done a lot of research on Facebook ads in the last year, and personally, I am convinced that it is a powerful tool for residential service providers. So if you're interested in some more resources, including a step-by-step guide on how to use Facebook ads to grow your residential service business, then I want you to go to my website, constructionleadingedge.com/Facebook, and fill out the form there, and let me know that you're interested in learning more about Facebook ads, and I'm going to get some resources out to you. Now, without further ado, let's get to the interview with Miss Jennifer Lanzetti. Enjoy. All right. Well, Jennifer, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
So let's just jump into it. Well, you are fairly well known right now, and for those folks who may not be following what's going on, just tell us a little bit about why you might be well known in the media right now.
Okay. I am a contestant on Survivor season 32, which is on CBS. And I've recently been cast out from my tribe. I was second voted off. And the manner in which it happened was not quite what I thought they'd show. Reality TV is anything but reality. But I've been getting a lot of bad publicity, a lot of cruel things are being said, and it's just something I've never experienced before, but at the same time, I know that it's all unfounded. I mean, the only thing people saw was the character CBS portrayed me as, but nonetheless, it's a lot of attention right now, a lot of attention.
Yeah, that is unfortunate. So you spent, how long were you in Survivor before you were voted out?
So I was there for 6 days, and it was a very challenging 6 days. If there's anything, the only thing that is very real about Survivor are the conditions out there. Our tribe, we didn't drink water for 3.5 days. Obviously, it's very limited in the amount of food you get. The temperatures range from 105 to 120, depending on the day. I got bit on my face by a centipede 8 times on day 1. I also had a parasite, a flesh-eating worm in my ear on day 2 and 3, and I got third-degree burns on my eyelids, making a fire on day 4, and then I ate a poisonous plant on day 6. It was quite a rough experience.
But you were ready to go the distance.
I was beyond ready to go the distance. I had so much left in me, so much left in me. I did learn that being honest and having integrity don't make the best bedfellows when it comes time to vote people out, but
yeah.
There's no shame in how I played the game. I will never apologize for being who I am and standing up for my character and and what I believe in.
Well, I think the fact that you were ready to go another 33 days after all that adversity is a testament to some of the adversity you've gone through in your life, which we'll get to in just a few minutes. But tell us, what are some of the business lessons that you learned out of Survivor, if any?
I did. I think one of the biggest ones I've learned is, when I got on the island, my gut instincts was telling me to make a certain decision and, to go with an all-girl alliance. And that has nothing it really didn't have anything to do as far as my opinions on gender. I just think it's really powerful when women of different nationalities, different cultures, different ages can come together and band together for a worthy cause. And I think not only winning $1 million, but also just saying, hey, we did this. We're not only an all-girl alliance, but we're all brawn. I mean, brawn typically tends to be a male standard, adjective. So it was nice to think of that, but I did look at my circumstances and realize that was going to be probably impossible. The 2 women I had on my tribe probably weren't the best choice for that alliance. So I went with a different alliance, but my gut kept nagging at me. My gut just absolutely kept nagging at me. And finally there was an opportunity. I was approached, and there's an opportunity to do the all-girl alliance. And I thought, you know what? Your gut's been telling you to do this all along. And so I did it. And it literally ended in a disaster. Agreeing to go along with the suggested alliance was a disaster, and again, there's plenty of media online to show how disastrous it was. But the lesson is, following anyone's gut doesn't mean you're going to win. It just means you're on the right path, and that might sound untrue, because you would think, I think the false truth behind following your gut is that you're always going to win and it's always going to be the right decision. And I'm here to tell you, following your gut is the right decision. We're desire-driven creatures. We all are driven by desire. So we have goals and we're trying to reach them. And unless you follow your gut, you're not going to be on the right road that leads you there. Your gut is putting you in the right trajectory to reach those goals. It will be painful. There will be struggles, and there will be immense joy on this road. But unless you follow your gut, you're on a ladder that's leaned against the wrong building. You have to make sure you're in the right place.
So success, doing the right thing, doesn't mean you'll win every time.
Absolutely, it doesn't. It just means you're doing the right thing for your future desires. And that's why following your gut is so unique to everyone, because everyone's gut instincts are going to tell them something different. Every single one of us has a different gut instinct, but that's just because we have different ideas of what success is and different desires out there to achieve.
Interesting. No, I agree. Because the conception or the misconception is that if you are doing the right thing, then you're going to win every time.
Exactly.
You're going to get every deal. You'll never get screwed over. You'll never get fired. You'll never lose money. And it's just not the case.
Right. The rewards you receive from doing the right thing, sometimes it's in for the long haul. And I think that's why people make comments like no good deed goes unpunished, and other popular sayings come into mind, and it's because people don't realize that the world, whether we believe in karma or not, it is a very large world to revolve around. Nothing is instantaneous. Instant gratification is maybe something we want, but something we rarely receive. So to not do the right thing because it didn't work out the last time, terrible mistake. terrible mistake. Because then as soon as that happens, I think we jump the track. As soon as we don't follow our gut instinct and we don't do what we initially knew was correct, we jump the track. We're on a different train headed in the wrong direction.
Yeah, that's good. Because if you're always correcting based on what's going on in the rearview mirror, then you're not really going in any direction. You're always playing catch up.
Sure.
Were there any? And I think Survivor is such an interesting psychological and social dynamic. I hope the rest of the world's not like it, but I guess to some degree it is. Were there any like leadership or let's just stick to leadership. Any leadership lessons that you learned from being in Survivor?
I'm not sure if things I learned is how I'd put it. I was reminded what the show Survivor represents, and to me it represents a very old energy, a very old way of thinking, and that old way of thinking is survival of the fittest. And when I say the fittest in this game, it's the most deceitful, the best liars, the people that can screw you over and not have any consequences, or at least not realize that there are any consequences. To me, that's a very old energy. It's very archaic, but yet it's still there. And that is exactly what this game is based on. If you're honest, if you have integrity, you are made fun of. If you have any ounce of decency, they will make you look like a fool. That I was reminded of, not only at Tribal, but just in the game in general. It was very uncomfortable when it came time, or even time to consider lying or going against someone. I really truly hope, at least my experience has been, Survivor is not a microcosm of my macrocosm, right? It's not, there were very few alignments of what happened with the game with my real life. First of all, I don't hang out with a bunch of people I don't like 24/7. And I definitely put the interests of not only my employees first and foremost. They come first. I've noticed when I put my employees first, my clients are naturally gratified and well taken care for. So my employees come first, my clients are second, and I've noticed that with that attitude, we do really well. We care about what we do. We provide a lot of value. We put their needs first. Not once in that game does anybody provide value or put somebody else first. So not sure if I learned anything new or just remembered and reminded myself that this is not the environment that I typically find myself in.
Yeah, so it's not Survivor is not an economy of generosity. It's there's very little giving. It sounds like it's all taking and slicing up the pie, getting as much as you can instead of trying to make the pie bigger.
Sure, exactly. That's the perfect way to put it.
Interesting. So that's good. Well, let's talk about your business. Tell us about your business, because some people may be thinking, all right, Survivor, that's cool, but this is a podcast for construction leaders, business folks. So you have a construction, you're in the construction industry, you own a business. Tell us about what you do.
So I own a virtual construction business. I do have a business partner. There's 10 of us here in Salt Lake City. We do work locally and internationally. And so when I say a virtual construction company, we take 2D drawings and create them into 3D models. And with these 3D models, we're getting into the reality of our world, which is we live in a 3D world. We need to plan in a 3D world. So 2D overlays are going by the wayside, and what we're doing is 3D overlays. Consider it a spell check for a building. Will the mechanical system fit with the electrical and the fire in the interstitial space, and do we have enough room? Are all the concrete embeds for the steel correct? Is this building going to be efficient when it's running? We run energy analysis and compare variable air volume and make sure that the heat load isn't going to need a larger mechanical system. So we're taking everything about a project and we're testing it all virtually, long before we break ground, long before it sticks in bricks. And it's amazing the impact it's having in the industry. We're basically going from doing the same thing we've been doing for hundreds of years, and we've all finally, as an industry, decided, you know what, we're going to start doing this better.
Yeah, I've heard that. I'd never thought of it this way, but the reality is blueprints are not a great way to communicate.
No, they're very 2D, two-dimensional.
maybe a good way to assign risk from one entity to the other, but not the best way to communicate. So how did you what's your story leading up to your business?
Well, I used to be in real estate development. I've always been in construction in some facet. I was a laborer in high school and a little bit after high school. I just loved to build things with my hands, and that was residential. And then I was a real estate agent, on the other side of selling. And then I got into real estate development, and so I was involved in projects literally from concept to completion, meaning it's just an idea in some owner's head, and we find investors and do pro formas and due diligence, et cetera. One day, my job became less interesting, and we had just hired a construction manager, and he decided that he was going to take all the fun stuff, apparently. So I went to my boss and said, you know what, I have found my path, my new path. I'm going back to school to get my construction management degree. This was when I was 28. So, sold my house, sold the truck, sold everything, went back to school, became a pauper again, got my construction management degree, and when I got out in 2009, I just knew the right direction was BIM, Building Information Modeling, or as I like to call it, a baffling immense movement. I prefer that term. So I knew that was the direction to head. I worked my way up into becoming a director of a very large, very well-known construction company, and although I was making a difference there, it wasn't quite good enough. I knew I had more in me, and so I started seeing 3D construction, and it's just exploded. It's amazing. I came to the market at the right time. The first 6 years, we were pretty much, the industry was just begging people to do BIM, and now people are very much on board. They see the money savings, they see the logic, they see the resources. It's met its time. I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, it sounds like your timing was really good. And 2009 was kind of a tough time to start a business in the construction industry, right?
Well, so 2009 is when I graduated, and then I worked for another contractor for a little while. I just recently, my business is only 2 years old. However, 2008, 2009 was, although excruciating for some, it was also the birthplace of BIM. It's really when BIM took a hold, because finally we're at this point where there is an abundance. There is no longer an abundant amount of work. We have to tighten our margins, which means we have to do our job better. So if it wasn't for that crash, nobody would have taken any stock into considering, how do we do our job better? How do we, take our narrowing margins and make as much profit as we were before? So I credit the crash of our economy to everyone deciding that there is a better way, and we need to jump on board with that.
And that's probably why lean construction got so much traction as well, for the same reason.
I agree. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I've never really made that connection, but that makes perfect sense. So based on some of the interviews I've seen and read, you've been through your share of adversity, and this was before Survivor. Can you tell us about some of the adversity and the tough times you've experienced?
Sure, and for some listeners, this might be difficult to hear, because we all have opinions and delusions of grandeur of what our heroes and spokespersons should be like. And my life has definitely been colorful. And you want to talk about jumping the track and getting on the wrong train? I've done that a few times. I unfortunately had a disease present itself when I was about 18. It's called endometriosis, and it's a very common disease, but in some cases it's a very painful one. And mine was the painful case. I was repeatedly, it's a disease that affects the female reproductive system. I was repeatedly in the hospital. I went through probably about 15 surgeries in a period of 6 to 8 years. Honestly, it's kind of a blur in my past, because through all those surgeries, I became an addict. First, it was addiction to painkillers, and then I decided to self-medicate with some other drugs, because the painkillers couldn't touch the pain anymore. They weren't doing anything. So I have endometriosis, I'm a drug addict, and then I got told when I was 23, I will always remember the appointment when they told me, well, now we have found cancer, because I was in there for another surgery. And life definitely stopped. I stopped breathing, and I think my heart stopped beating for at least a few seconds, and a whole new world opened up to me, but it was a very ugly world. My drug use got worse. I got in trouble with the law. I probably weighed about 100 pounds at this point. So I was about 5.5 feet under. And through some miracle, I can accredit staying alive to having some friends and family support me, but I was truly on my own. I had ostracized so many people, and I just sat on my couch one day and I decided, you know what? No, I do want to live. And from that point, I served my time, I served my community, I went to drug rehab, and I had a hysterectomy to kill the cancer. And then I decided, okay, what's next? So I went back to school, got my degree, again, made my way up in the construction world and opened up my own company. And I'm far from done. I think, if anything, I have a lot of making up to do. 8 years of my life was a struggle, so I have a lot of thriving left in me.
Wow, that's a lifetime of tough times. So what did that adversity do to shape who you are today?
Well, it's definitely made me fearless. And when I say fearless, I don't mean I don't have fear. My goodness, I think fear creeps up a little bit each day. When you have a $50,000 plus payroll to meet every month, sometimes it can be intimidating. Like, oh my gosh, where's our next job going to come from? And is this client happy? I mean, there's always going to be fear, but I'm fearless in that nothing stops me. I mean, even with the bad negative publicity on the media from hundreds of thousands of people, I think, you know what? You can't shake me. You have no idea who I really am. And trust me, I've been through much worse than this. So even though they think their words make a difference, they don't. And that's why I was able to even start this business, because I had plenty of people telling me it would never work and that I should count my lucky stars and stay where I'm at and, basically keep going with the flow. But it definitely created a fearless woman.
So I'm sure you didn't see it this way while you were going through it, but would you say that adversity is an advantage for you now, or does it still hinder you?
It does hinder me a little. I'll be honest. Again, fearless, but there's still fear. I have moments of doubt when I'm going through really tough times. For example, the one right now, I do have moments of doubt, and I do get scared, and sometimes I do just want to hide. And sometimes hiding is exactly what people need to do. Hide, recover, gain your strength, and then go out and kick ass again. So I am in that mode. I'm in a little bit of a hiding mode myself, but what the adversity that I've already overcome has taught me is that every cruel, unfortunate event in my life has led to something great. Every single one. I can't think of one thing I've been through, one refiner's fire that I've been through that didn't uncover gold. So I know there's gold here, and so when I am up against adversity, I stick through it. I don't quit. I don't cry about it. I don't resort to, any kind of external pleasure with drugs or alcohol or what other things people engage in. I just stick through it, and I do so with the help of family and friends.
So you mentioned a few things that are probably answers to this question, and I've gone through some adversity myself. I've had a business that I had a partner that stole money, had to shut down a business, just about lost everything. I've had health problems with my oldest daughter, and so I know how I respond, how I tend to respond when things are going bad. But what are some of and you talked about external fixes, hiding. What are some of for the people who are going through adversity right now, what are the wrong things to do? What should they avoid at all costs if they're in that situation?
I think the number one thing to avoid is anything that brings you instant relief. If it's bringing you instant relief, that means it's a quick fix. And there is no quick fix to a problem that has taken a long time to develop. If it's taken a long time to develop, it might take a little while to resolve itself. So if you're feeling good instantly, it's going to be short-lived, and it's not foundational. It's more like relief care instead of corrective care. So if you're able to do it quickly and it feels really, really good, I would definitely avoid it. Now, I'm not saying don't eat a brownie. Okay, I'm not saying don't eat a brownie or don't have a pint of ice cream. Those do help. Sometimes you just need to feel good for 5 minutes, okay? I'm all on board with that. But you just can't make it a habit. It really comes down to remembering that judgments and adversity, what are you disowning in yourself? I know that other people's judgments against me are things they disown in themselves. There's something grotesquely wrong and inferior in their life, and they're projecting that. So whenever we're upset with ourselves, I have to turn inward and go, okay, what's going on? And the only way I can do that is to avoid the instant gratifications and to seek out help from, again, family and friends.
So that takes a pretty high level of self-awareness to do that. There's a lot of people who would say, you know what, I can't change. It's just the way I'm wired.
Sure.
When I get mad, I blow my top, or I stick my head in the sand. I can't change. It's just the way I am. I've like the stupid things people say, like, well, they have red hair, so they have a bad temper.
Right.
That's kind of ridiculous. So yeah, I agree. It takes a great deal of self-awareness to say, all right, what's going on? I realize this would feel good right now, but it's not the right thing to do long term.
And there's something to be said about self-awareness. So I think I have a high sense of self-awareness, but it didn't come overnight. It didn't come from calm seas. It came from very rough seas. And the only way I even dove into my self-awareness was by reaching out and talking to people. I think people discover who they are by talking about themselves with other people and getting feedback. It's like, okay, perception's reality. What is your perception of me? And then to say to them, well, here's where I meant to come from. What should my behavior look like if this is my behavior and this is how I want you to think of me? What should my behavior look like in order for you to perceive me that way? And it's amazing the dialogue that can come out of that. There will be hurt feelings. I mean, these are people we love and trust, but it's amazing the dialogue that comes out of that. I do that in my business all the time. I go to my employees and say, all right, what do you really think of me? You're not fired. Just tell me what you think. I care about you. I want to make my business better, and I also want to make you happy. So what am I doing that's making you uncomfortable or whatever?
And they start looking around like, where's the trap door? Is there an alligator pit? Are you for real?
Right.
20 years ago, I went through a training session, and the facilitator said something that I'll never forget. He said that self-awareness is like hugging a porcupine. And the closer you get, the more uncomfortable it becomes. So yeah, it's like anytime you toss that softball up there, what do you really think of me? You're like, all right, let's hug that porcupine because this is going to freaking hurt.
Yeah,
but you're right.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's uncomfortable, but if you want to grow, you have to do it.
Absolutely. I don't recommend doing it very often. Maybe just once or twice a week, maybe once a month, because you don't want to ask 20 people how they feel about you the same day. That would make for a very bad day.
Yeah, it's like you want to take a small dose of that, definitely. All right, well, you seem really nice, but I hear that you're a straight shooter, that you're a no BS kind of gal. Mm-hmm. So talk about the importance of being direct in business. Maybe it didn't get you very far in Survivor. It didn't serve you well on the island. But being direct in business, in my experience, has been there's a lot of superficiality in people saying what they think other people want to hear. Talk to us a little bit about why is it important to be direct?
It's to me, being direct is the third dimension. So we get plans, and it has the X and the Y dimension, and there's so much speculation on Z, right? That's why we have so many change orders and so many RFIs, because people are asking questions because they don't have all the information they need. To me, being direct is that third dimension. It's the Z dimension. It's saying, okay, here's some information, but here's the rest of the information. It cuts down so much red tape and so much wasted time. I'm sure you've had experiences where something or say something and then you're like, well, why didn't you tell me that a month ago? And that's what being direct does, is here, there's no beating around the bush. Here's the information I have to share with you, and here's all of it. Yes, this might hurt your feelings. Yes, this might go against what your beliefs are, but the ultimate goal is blank, and since we all need to get there, here is that third dimension. Here's that extra input directly downloaded. And there's got to be tact. I'm fine with being blunt. I prefer it when people are blunt and tell me how it is, but tact helps.
Yeah, content and delivery. Right. A big part of it is delivery, that's for sure. So is it, in my experience, people are not direct because they're afraid. They're
True.
Afraid of what somebody might think, or they might, I don't want to show my cards too early. I don't want to be transparent. In dealing with like manager-employee relations, owners don't want to let their employees know that they don't have all the answers, and the employees have this fear. It seems like a lot of it's rooted in fear. Would you agree?
I would agree. And we were talking about self-awareness before, and for me to come on national television and share with everyone my drug history and my trouble with the law and the disease and all of that, it took a great amount of self-love and self-acceptance for me to get to that point to share that. So this is where, in construction especially, we're coming up against what's called our intelligence quotient versus our emotional intelligence quotient. We are in a place where to do business these days, we can't just have an IQ, we need an EQI. We need to have some sort of emotional awareness of who we are as people, and have an awareness of other people as well. So you're right, there is going to be a lot of fear. What will this person think of me? Will they hate me? Well, say those things. I tell people, say those things out loud. Maybe not in a room or a group of people if it makes you uncomfortable, but in being direct, if you have something to say, I have something to say, but I'm intimidated because of blank, or I am worried that you'll think this if I'm honest with you. There's got to be some exposure to you being human, to all of us being human when it comes to being blunt.
And are you still, are there still times where you're uncomfortable being direct?
Oh my goodness.
Where
often.
So it's not something where it's like, oh, well, you do it once and then you got it and you're never going to be uncomfortable again.
Right.
I think it's actually good. I'm a little concerned about people who like confrontation, who enjoy it.
True. That's true.
It concerned me just a little bit.
Right. Yeah, we don't want, there's always a spectrum, right? There's one end of the spectrum and then there's the other end of the spectrum. I think people who enjoy confrontation forget that they're dealing with people who have feelings, and that, again, there has to be some sort of consideration for delivery. And then there's the opposite of people who absolutely avoid confrontation and you can't get a single bit of information out of them. So there's definitely a spectrum to be concerned with.
Yeah, and I've found when I've had to have tough conversations with people, I've found that it's helped me to just write down what my concerns are, because they typically just kind of float around in your head like, well, what if they blow up, or what if they cry, or what if this happens, or what if they get violent. And if you write these things down, you can look at them and say, that's ridiculous. What am I worried about? Let's just get this taken care of.
I like that. That's actually very good.
So one of the more interesting books that I've read is it's a book called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. Have you heard of it?
No, I'm writing it down right now, actually. The War of Art.
The War of Art. Maybe kind of an obscure book, but he talks a lot about resistance. And he talks about, one of my big takeaways was that if you're attempting to do something significant, then there will be resistance.
Absolutely.
And that another way I say it is, resistance is a symptom of doing something worthwhile. Mm-hmm. So if there's no resistance to what you're doing, it's probably not all that worthwhile. What kind of resistance, whether internal or external, did you encounter when you started your business?
The biggest resistance was my own self-discipline. We have these illusions that, I can do this, no problem. But when there's not someone telling you what you can do, it's a lot different. So I get this self-discipline under control and realize, all right, there's no one telling me what to do. I just keep following my gut instincts and then just do that. And then you start hiring employees, and you have an idea in your head of who you want them to be and how you want them to act. And then you have 10 of them and realize that they all don't act the way you want them to, and they all have their own way of doing things, and they're all individuals. I mean, so the resistance was overcoming my expectations. Biggest and by far the greatest resistance was that. Insert being a female in the construction industry. It does not bother me one bit. I've never made my gender an issue. It doesn't bother me. The reality is it does bother some other people. And I live in a state that has a very high population of a certain religion, and women are seen, I wouldn't say inferior, but they're just seen differently. And so there's that resistance. I'm not only a woman in construction, but I'm in a state where women don't typically get into the field I'm in or act the way I do or have opinions and is loud like I am. So all kinds of resistance.
Other than that, you don't stand out at all.
No, I blend in well.
Sounds like it.
So there's a lot. Yeah, I could go on and on. There's been a lot of resistance, but what I want people to know is that there is going to be some external resistance, but don't be afraid and don't forget to address the internal resistance as well.
Yeah, let's talk about that internal resistance. So that your comment about the master-slave relationship, that's probably pretty surprising for folks. I had my own business for a while, and I thought I was ready, but it takes a lot of discipline because there's nobody else there to make sure that cash flow is taken care of, right, telling you what to do, making the high-level decisions. So what are some of the other mindset changes that you had to make when you started your business?
The big thing was, so everyone starts their business because they want to do what they love to do. You know, that maybe they're in a job doing something they hate to do, and they're doing a job they hate to do often. Maybe it's all day, maybe it's only 30% of your day, but you know that you don't want to do that anymore. So you start your own business because there's that delusion that, yes, I get to do all the fun things now. It's going to be completely great, 24/7, nothing but what I want to do. And that is the hugest fallacy. That's the wrong belief. It's a lie. You're actually going to be engaging in, especially a small business and a medium business. I mean, we are a small business. I do my own books. I do my own bookkeeping. I do my own accounting. I do payroll. I do document. I do database. I do all these things that I never enjoyed doing. And so really, to be honest, I'm in about a 50-50 of things I love to do versus things I don't love to do.
Yeah, I think I remember the moment at my desk about a year or two into my own business. I had left a good job with a general contractor because I thought, you know what, I saw my career path going in a direction, and I thought, you know what, I want to be closer to the field. I really enjoy being in the field. So I started my own business, was out there swinging a hammer, running the crews. And then I remember pretty quickly that the business grew to the point where I was in the office all the time. And I remember the day I realized I'm worse off than I was when I worked for somebody else. I don't get to do anything I like. I hate dealing with workman's comp, and I hate
it too.
payroll, and I hate insurance, and I hate collections, and what have I done?
Right.
Yeah. So that's a big surprise. Were there any other fallacies or big mindset shifts that people who are contemplating starting a business need to be aware of?
Yeah, and that's an attachment to expectation. Again, this is this gray area between being intelligent and book smart and just having common sense and being human smart. And it comes to the expectations of your employees. You're going to hire people, and yes, we have expectations of them because we're giving them a paycheck. So we think, hey, I give you this, you give me this in return, no questions asked. Don't argue with me, don't have an opinion about it, this is the way it is. And that is just a huge fallacy. That is impossible. You're hiring people, you're not hiring robots. And so I didn't realize how much HR work would be involved. And I love getting to know each and every employee as an individual because they are an individual. But then you also have to learn how to address them each as individuals. What makes them tick? How do you get them to rally behind you? And I learned early on it's impossible to get 10, 20, even companies with 1 million people. There is no such thing as getting people to rally behind you. It's getting people to rally behind your mission.
Very good.
Getting them, to rally behind the idea and the reason why you're in business. So I'm learning all these things, and I love it. There's a lot of business books out there, and they teach us everything that I just said because that's where I learned them from. Unfortunately, until you're in it, it means nothing. If I would have read a business book 10 years ago, it would have made zero impact. It's now that I'm actually in it and doing it that these impacts are being made.
Yeah, there are tough lessons that you're only going to learn by trial by fire, unfortunately.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's talk about, we may have touched on these a little bit, but in my experience, limiting beliefs are a big challenge for people. Kind of the like we talked about before the interview, I see them as like lenses, glasses that people wear that color the way they see the world, and they don't even know they're there. They assume everybody sees the world that way. They're not aware. What are some of the limiting beliefs about running a business that that you think people need to be aware of?
Well, I know that. Go ahead.
Well, go ahead.
I know that when, and I might not be answering this correctly, but I know that when I wanted to start my business, it took me a while. It's one thing to have the idea to do it, right? But then there's the convincing my own self that I can do it. And then, of course, you tell other people, and I'm a wholehearted believer in telling people your dreams, because then there's some accountability, right? That means they're going to check on you to see if you're doing it. So it helps to tell other people. So I got to that stage, and of course I was met with a lot of resistance and a lot of opinions, but the strangest ones were the reasons why they would never do it. And I thought, why on earth are you telling me why you wouldn't do it? It's almost like they felt ashamed that they weren't doing it as well. And that led me to realize that, again, judgments from people are a reflection of themselves. They were damning me for opening my own business, but that's because of their own fears. It wasn't because of anything I was saying or I was doing. It was literally an introspection into their own life and their own limiting beliefs. So, of course, I see their limiting beliefs, and I have to ask myself, what are mine? And have you heard the principle of desire before?
Sounds familiar, but tell me about it.
So the principle of desire is that because you desire it, it's possible. You wouldn't desire something that was impossible. Wayne Dyer, one of my favorite all-time inspirational speakers, was having an interview with a news anchor once, and he's saying, Wayne, so what you're telling me is that if I wanted to be the quarterback for the New York Giants, I could, because he's basically saying, we can do anything we want in this world. And Wayne looks at him and he says, well, do you want to be a quarterback of the Giants? And the news anchor said, you know what, I actually don't. So of course you can't, because it's not something you desire. So we have this principle of desire. We desire it, therefore we can achieve it. But that's great to say, I want this, and that's great to say, yes, I can do this. So why aren't you? Why aren't we achieving our desires? And you nailed it. It's limiting beliefs. It's this belief that we can't, or we don't deserve to, or we're not good enough. I mean, they play a huge role in taking the risk and taking that leap into actually saying goodbye to a solid paycheck, goodbye to health care that's not so expensive, goodbye to free lunches when we have training. I mean, there's all kinds of things that we say goodbye to.
So can you give us an example of a limiting belief that you realized you had and how you reversed it or got past it? Todd,
I've done so much work on eliminating my limiting beliefs. I honestly don't remember what some of them are. Like, I have done so much work on this. I'll write down the desire, and then I do what's called just the brainstorming, the cloud brainstorming of everything from back to childhood all the way to adulthood. So I'm trying to think. I don't know if I have an answer off the top of my head.
Well, it sounds like, I guess what I was getting at was the process. Can you tell us about your process for how you work through a limiting belief from, like, recognition through reversal? Right.
So it's here's what I desire, and so one of my desires, of course, was to have own my own business, and it came down to asking myself why that wasn't happening yet. Because I've always wanted it, so why hadn't it happened yet, and why wasn't it successful yet? And to me, I do a lot of kind of alternative medicinal, new age thinking. There's a lot of things out there, like there's tapping and there's rapid eye technology. There's all kinds of, it's called RET. There's all kinds of different things we can tap into because it's really tapping into ourselves. We're using all these different techniques to tap into ourselves. So I won't go into that detail too much, but I think it all comes down to just the simple statement of what is holding me back. Whether people believe in God or a creator or some universal aura that's over all of us, you will get an answer. It's not going to just pop right up, but if you just ask yourself, what are my limiting beliefs in regards to this desire, they will show up. They will show up in your friends. They will show up in in the people you work with. They will show up in a fortune cookie. I mean, it's kind of fun and amazing to see how the information is downloaded to you. But the first step, I think, is just asking.
Interesting. Yeah, I've heard the same thing from a few other folks. Like if you ask a question, then you'll get the answer.
Right. Yep.
In
a weird way, usually. It's never in a normal way.
Yeah. All right, so let's just get down to it. There's some folks listening to this podcast who they want to make the jump. They want to transition from wantrepreneur to entrepreneur. They want to start their own shop, start their own business. You've already given some great advice, but what advice would you give to someone who's in that situation?
I'd say surround yourself with like-minded people. There's a reason why they're the saying, birds of a feather. I decided to quit talking to my friends who were naysayers. I was so excited to share with them and tell them my plans, but their negativity really brought me down. So I sought out mentors. I called up people that had made the leap and said, hey, let me buy you lunch. Let me buy you lunch and pick your brain. Sure, they're the millionaires, they're the rich ones, but if you go to them and say, hey, let me buy you lunch because that's how much I value you and your opinion and what you can teach me, you'll see 9 times out of 10, maybe even 10 times out of 10, they'd be happy to share their success with you because that's what entrepreneurs do. They love to see people get over the wall. They got over the wall, and they didn't do it by themselves, so it's like all of our way of paying it forward. I love it when people come to me and say, hey, let me pick your brain. I want to do this, and I'd love to get your insight, and I'm more than happy to because that's what I did, and that's what made it work for me. So it's, to me, the biggest thing you can do is change your mind frame of reference that you are capable, you are worthy, and the only way to do that is to surround yourself with people who also believe the same thing.
Yeah, and speaking of limiting beliefs, you probably just hammered a couple of limiting beliefs because people think, successful people don't want to talk to anybody else.
Right.
They just want to sit in their ivory tower. And the reality is, the good ones want to help other people. And if they don't want to help you, you probably don't want to talk to them anyway.
Exactly, because their success, I assure you, is either not a happy success or it's a very limited one.
Yeah, great advice. Great advice. All right, let me shift gears a little bit. Do you have any daily routines that contribute to your success?
So I don't want to repeat like the typical ones because there are some very typical ones online. You can go to any website and see what those are. So I'm going to share maybe some out of the ordinary ones. We all want to laugh. There's something to be said about having joy in your life. So we all want to have that laughter, and if it's working with friends or talking to your family. So I have a laugh break at least 2 or 3 times a day where I literally stop what I'm doing and I'll go on YouTube or I'll walk by an employee and say, tell me a joke, quick. Tell me a good one. Tell me something that'll make me laugh. Before I talked about instant gratification being not a good thing, well, I'll tell you what, when it comes to laughter, it's brilliant. So I take laugh breaks. I love just stopping what I'm doing and taking laugh breaks. The other thing that I like to do is taking body breaks. So I'll go out. I'm sure you've heard of stretch and flex. Companies will, take 5 minutes in the morning and everybody stretches and flexes, and I do that. I will stop. I will stretch. I will stretch out my arms and my legs and do body twists, and while I'm doing that, I'm breathing and just letting go and thinking about what I'm stretching in my body and not thinking about work. I think we've all had that epiphany where we're really stuck on a problem, and as soon as we take a break and go do something else, it instantly pops into our head.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of my success is taking a break from my agenda. There's nothing wrong with driving hard and setting a lot of goals and doing a lot of action items to accomplish those goals, but I realized one day that if you're always moving, nobody can catch up with you. If you're always moving, so if energy is trying to catch up with you to reward you for all your hard work, it can't catch up with you if it can't find you. So sometimes we just need to stop, Stop with the achieving, stop with the accomplishments, stop with the goal setting, and just breathe, stretch, laugh, enjoy yourself, take a break, and then it's like, bam, everything you've been chasing finally stops and catches up with you. I actually created an unresolution this year at the new year. Really? Like, I'm not creating one single resolution. I'm actually taking one away. I am not setting a single goal this year. This probably is like against what most sages teach you, but I was like, I'm not gonna set a single goal this year. I'm gonna let my goals catch up with me.
That's good advice. Have you read the book Essentialism by Greg McKeown?
No, I haven't. I'm gonna write that one down too.
That's a good one. It's about the pursuit of what does he call it? Eliminating the frivolous many for the critical few.
Oh, okay.
It's say no to everything.
Yes, say no to everything.
cut stuff out. It's really good, really good book. So if anybody's interested, I'll post a link to that book in the show notes, along with some of these other resources we've talked about. So speaking of books, that's a brilliant segue that I just stumbled into. Do you have any book recommendations that folks listening should read?
We're salespeople. I mean, construction, although we do build buildings and water treatment facilities and schools and all sorts of things, we are in the people business. It's a service business, and it always will be. So you're selling yourself every single day. And there's all kinds of books out there on how to get people to like you. But what you're really trying to do, I've learned, we're not trying to get people to like us. We're trying to get people to change. We're trying to get people to change their current vendor and to go with us. We're trying to get people to change their current contract. Trying to get people to change, like for me, it's huge. I'm trying to get people to change from 2D drawings to 3D models. So I read a book, and it's called Switch. It's by the Heath brothers. Yeah. Because we all know that people would much rather die than change. Apparently, it's a very fearful process, and people. The majority of people don't like change. I've done tons of research on this, and I've asked a lot of my students and employees to tell me their feelings on it. So if that's the main goal, we're trying to get them to change to either see our way, and I don't mean this in a manipulative way, but we are trying to get people to change and go with us. If people don't go with us, we don't have a business for very long. So this book, Switch, it talks about change. It talks about how to get people to change, not in a manipulative way, but in a way that actually builds people up. Like, it helps you become a team. It helps people to see your message. And even if they don't change and don't go with you, at least now they're open to your message instead of being resistant to it, which is, to me, that's a brilliant beginning just to begin with, is for people to understand you instead of, dismissing you. So I think of all the business books, that one there is my favorite because I am in the business of change, but my other favorite is called The Go-Giver. And I don't have, it's written by two gentlemen, I don't have the book offhand, but it's brilliant. There's 5 laws to success. It's very short, it's very easy to read, and once you read them, even if you don't do all 5 laws, even if you just believe in one of them, the whole foundation is on value. If you're getting in business to get just money, that's, like you said earlier, it's literally looking in the rearview mirror as you chase money. You might get money, absolutely, you might get money, but you're getting into the right business when what you really care about is providing value. You want to make a difference. You love what you do. You're good at it. You have a gift to offer the world, and this business you're getting into is the gift you're offering the world. Whether it's 20 people a year or 5 million people a year, you're on the right track when your number one desire is providing value. And so that's what The Go-Giver talks about.
Yeah, I've not read that book, but I've listened to an interview with the author, and I'll have a link to that book on the show notes, and I'll look up the author as well. And back to the Heath brothers, the book Switch. I haven't read that one, but I did read Made to Stick. Okay. That they wrote. Really, really great stuff. And another one that I would recommend that goes along with getting people to change, it's about how to motivate people, is a book by Dan Pink called Drive.
Okay.
fascinating book about the science of motivation, how people are actually motivated. And he basically makes the claim, he has a TED Talk where he basically says, our entire business, the world, all businesses, not just the construction industry, all businesses are ignoring the science of motivation. And actually, not only are they ignoring how to motivate people, they're doing it completely wrong so that it drives people away.
Sure,
So,
they're using the stick instead of the carrot,
it's all external motivation and instead of internal motivation. So great stuff. I'll definitely check those books out and include links in the show notes for that. So we are, you've been very generous with your time. I appreciate that. We'll wrap this up. Where can people connect with you personally, and where can they find out more about your business?
So my business is cn3dconstruction.com, and that's the letter C, the letter N, 3 and D. It's kind of I've had people ask me what the C and the N stands for, and it just makes me giggle. If you just say it 3 times, it all comes together. So that's a great place to contact me. You can go to the About and contact me there, or it's just Jennifer at cn3dconstruction.com. Personally, I love getting feedback. You can reach me on Facebook, on Twitter, as well as on LinkedIn.
Great. Well, I'll be sure to include links to Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and so people can connect with you there. So, Jennifer, thanks so much. You've been awesome. This is already at the top of my list of favorite interviews, and I hope that the folks who are throwing dirt on you can listen to this interview to see how great you are. And on behalf of the audience, thank you for everything you've shared. Thank you for persevering and doing everything you're doing for our industry, and for being on the podcast.
Okay. No, I appreciate it very much. Thanks, Todd.
All right. Hope you enjoyed that interview. Personally, this is already one of my favorites. It was a great conversation, a lot of great insight from a very sharp lady, and I hope you apply what you've learned. Now, as mentioned in the show, you can go to constructionleadingedge.com/046 for all the notes and book references and links to the things we talked about in this interview. Don't forget, if you're interested in Facebook ads and learning how you can use those to grow your residential service business, go to constructionleadingedge.com/Facebook. And hey, if you want to join the Construction Leading Edge Nation and be part of the community of like-minded business owners and leaders, you can do that by going to the homepage, which, if you haven't figured that out yet, it's constructionleadingedge.com. Click on the big green button that says to join the Construction Leading Edge Nation. That is it for now. So until next time, my name is Todd DeWalt. Thanks for listening.